ornamental. So I'm going to go ahead and share my, oh, can I get permission, Bernard, to share my screen? You have to share a little bit of your power.
I set that up early before you joined, so
Oh, when I click on it, it says host.
right. Right. Hang on, because I
Oh yeah.
probably did start this several times.
Oh, that's
Hang
okay.
on. Yeah. Okay. Now you have it.
All right. Oh, this is wonderful.
Try again.
Okay. There we go. Are y'all able to see that? Is that visible?
We can see it. Yes, that's perfect.
Excellent. Okay, so today we are going to talk about how to write and sell short essays to newspapers and magazines. And I'm going to try to cram 6 hours of information into about an hour and 15 minutes. You think I can do it? Later, I'll give you my email address so that you can email me if you want this PowerPoint. I am very happy to share all of this information with you. So, one moment. I can't get it to switch because it's got to do that. So just really quick, I don't want to spend a lot of time on who I am, but I am the author of 7 published books. They're all traditionally published. 2 of them aren't on here because they'll be out next year, but 2 memoirs, 2 middle grade novels, and 1 sort of resource book for teens, tweens, parents, and caregivers. And my pieces have been pretty much all over the place, and you can see more at my website, melissahart.com. So, what is a personal essay? Basically, editors at magazines and newspapers consider a personal essay between 100 and 1,200 words. In some cases, that can be a bit longer, a nonfiction story based on your experiences. And this can include scenes with people and animals and specific settings and all sorts of indoor and outdoor settings. You can include research and interviews in your personal essays. And there are certainly magazines that are willing to publish 4,000, 5,000 word essays, especially if you're incorporating research and interviews with experts. An essay differs, I think, from a story in that it is guided by a thesis. But unlike my daughter's college English class, you don't have to write that thesis in the essay. Readers should have a working understanding of it, but you don't have to put it in there. In fact, that's kind of embarrassing. So it's like letting your underwear show, which is very fashionable right now, isn't it? A thesis is the topic of your essay and the points you wish to make about that topic. I have to write out my thesis in a single sentence and tape it basically to my forehead when I write a rough draft to keep myself from going into the weeds. And more on that later. This graphic here is, I'm really proud of this story. This is Cheryl Landis. She was a student of mine in an online essay writing class, and she wrote this piece that got published in Huffington Post. I was married with a full-time job. Then I had to move into my car. And again, I'll send you this slideshow so that you have these titles. And it's a really powerful personal essay about being married and watching her husband descend into a mental health crisis to the point where he lost his job, they lost their house. She had to live in her car. And it's an extraordinary piece. I tell this to you because I think this is her first ever published essay, and I think she's in her late 50s. And so it's never too late to publish an essay. You can publish an essay into your 90s. That's absolutely fine. What is getting published these days? Here are some samples that I pulled from the internet, an essay titled How I Came to Appreciate the Video Memories I Experienced as an Autistic Woman. In between dogs, dogs shape our lives. So what do we do when they're gone? That was in the dog magazine called The Wildest. I left my six-figure career to find happiness. Here's how I did it. That's clickbait. How my mother's postcards forged connections across generations. Finding my climate conscious tribe, Black nature lovers and writers. And Kaveh Akbar's How I Found Poetry in Childhood Prayer. There's a sample of what's out there getting published in the personal essay realm. The three questions that editors ask, whether they are at a magazine or a newspaper or a radio station that broadcasts personal essays like NPR, they ask when they see your essay submission, is the topic new? And if it isn't new, are you treating it in a new and exciting manner? You know, a lot of editors that I have spoken with, they get a lot about my dearly departed dog or my dearly departed grandmother or father. That's a pretty tried and true topic. To really grab their interest, you have to put a new spin on it. And I'll say up front, one of my trade secrets, editors never receive enough humorous submissions. We're all very earnest. We all take ourselves and life very seriously. If you can send an editor a personal essay that is both poignant and humorous and makes readers both laugh and cry, I kid you not, they will be unable to say no to you. This is what they're looking for. So they asked, is your subject new or is your treatment of that subject new? Is it relevant? So think about who is reading that particular magazine or that particular newspaper op-ed section, and think about, is this essay relevant to those particular readers? You know, an essay that you're writing on your first time training for and running a marathon might be of interest as an essay to men's health, but it's not, if you're a man, it's not going to be of a whole lot of interest to those who are reading the craft magazine Bead and Button, or say Dog Fancy or something like that, unless you're training with your dog. And then finally, and most importantly, editors are looking for, is it surprising? Is your essay surprising? Is it treating your subject in a new way? Are you using surprising language? Are you using surprising new formats? Is the information surprising? The graphic, by the way, is my great-grandparents with their plane. After they left the early 1900 circus, they went into vaudeville, and they were early aviators. So they flew from theater to theater across the US in their home-built, or not home-built, in their plane. I'm actually writing a historical novel as well about them, and just had a big essay about them published in Hidden Compass magazine. And I can send that to you if you're interested. But the reason that got published is because it was a relatively new treatment of an old topic, vaudeville. It's looking at how the art of vaudeville was deeply bigoted and deeply inclusive all at the same time. It's relevant because I make the point that vaudeville is the precursor to things like, not really the Great British Baking Show, but more The Voice, America's Got Talent. That's all vaudeville. And is it surprising? My great-grandparents were quite surprising. My great-grandfather had an act in which he slid down the tight wire on his head. And I actually have his helmet. If there's time, I'll show it to you. So, is it new? Is it relevant? Is it surprising? Here's what I mean by new. These are pieces that Newsweek just published, an essay called I'm a Doctor in Gaza. I've never seen our biggest problem before. This is an essay about how this doctor has no sinks in his clinic. They can't wash their hands at a sink. Another, I'm helping asylum seekers at the Texas border. And I don't know how to make it so this goes away. Oh, there we go. Another racist teachers labeled me a bad breed. Granddad saved my life. So there are some new ideas, brand new topics. Well, racism is not a brand new topic. I'm sorry. But we're talking about asylum at the Texas border and Gaza and being a doctor there. So topics that are relatively new. What I mean by relevant is pieces like this, pieces that will appeal to specific readers. So modern love, and I'm sorry that graphic is so small. Modern Love, as you probably all know, is a section of the New York Times on Sundays that publishes 100-word essays, personal essays of 100 word. They recently published What the Ukrainian Grandmothers Have Written. Dame magazine, which I absolutely adore, is, I don't know how to describe it. You'll just have to go to their website. They published a piece of mine that I really like. And they just published Dungeons and Dragons is the game we need now. And this heading is probably too small for you to see, but it's a theme of power structures. And so it's an essay looking at the empowerment that playing D&D can give you. Now, I have to tell you that I just quit my husband's D&D game team. I don't even know what you call it. I tried, people. I tried for 6 months. I was so bored. I cannot sit still for 3 hours. Oh my gosh, more on that later. So here's a 100-word piece, what the Ukrainian grandmothers have written that appeared as an essay in Tiny Love Stories in the New York Times. Ukrainian springtime love song. And it starts at my Ukrainian grandmother's house in Chicago, circa 1970. Easter began right after Christmas. The aroma of burning candle, melting beeswax, vinegar dye, and fresh coffee would wake me. Grandma would be sitting at her table barefoot. In one hand, she cradled an egg. In the other, she held a kiska, a wooden stylus dipped in wax. As she painted, Ukrainian flowers bloomed, musical scores played, golden wheat sprouted. Grandma translated her memories at home for me. Ukrainians call these eggs pisanki. I can't really say that, from pisati, meaning to write. And oh, what the Ukrainian grandmothers have written each and every springtime. Now this got published in part because Ukraine is on everybody's minds, and so it's relevant and new in terms of its topic, but also because it's an absolutely stunning 100-word essay that makes incredible use of imagery. Anytime you can grab your readers by appealing to their five senses with details like the burning candle, the melting beeswax, the vinegar dye, the coffee, the barefoot, etc. Anytime you can grab us with those sensory details, we feel like we're a part of your story, and that is a wonderful gift to give us. So here's what I mean by surprising, a couple of newer titles. There's an essay up on Next Avenue right now called Extra Credit Returning to University at age 77. The subhead is Living in a Retirement Community closely affiliated with a research institution gives me an intergenerational opportunity to resume my formal education. How could you not want to read that? That is so tempting. Here's another piece that The Cut just published. I became Asian when I left Asia. Who do we mean when we refer to the Asian American community? So both of these topics surprising and relevant to the magazine's particular readers. Here's a couple of more surprising recent headlines. Guard cat credited with preventing would-be robbery. Doctors lost an organ inside of me. Now, I can't see any of you. If we were in person, I would ask you to raise your hand if that makes you want to keep reading that essay. And I'll bet you 90% of you would raise your hands. They lost an organ in, how does that happen? And then another, this is from Huffington Post. A stranger told me I shouldn't take sexy selfies as a mom. Here's my response. This one came with pictures, and you can find it on huffpost.com. So this is what I mean by surprising. So one of the things I do when I sit down to kind of renew my list of potential personal essays is I identify my areas of expertise. So I look at my particular skills and talents and hobbies, and in some cases, educational degrees. Some of you who introduced yourself today, you have degrees in absolutely fascinating subjects. And there's, yeah, I'll tell you later. So the reason I have this picture up here is that one of my, I get, is it a skill or a talent or a hobby? Long distance running. I train and run half marathons, and I've written quite a bit about running half marathons. And I'm not quite sure why I do this. It really hurts, but it certainly makes for some good essays. I would love for you right now to jot down 3 of your areas of expertise. The more surprising, the better. 3 of your areas of expertise, the more surprising, the better. For instance, I spent 8 years training owls. I trained owls at a local raptor rehabilitation center for environmental education presentations. And I trained them to sit on my gloved arm as I talked about owls. And I have written quite a bit about training owls. What are your 3 areas of expertise? I got to figure out how I can see you. Okay, there, now I can see you. Does anybody want to share one? The more surprising, the better. The weirder, the better.
I'll share.
Yes, please.
I don't know how skilled I am at it, but my list has birds, cancer care, and roses.
Oh, yes. Okay, so birds, tell us more. Be surprising.
Um, I've been a birder for 20 plus years, and I've built myself a little ecosystem in my backyard
There you
with a
go.
fountain and a platform feeder, kind of like the Cornell lab has.
Oh,
And I spend tons of time just looking at them with binoculars.
okay.
And I know them all, and I kind of can now tell them by what they sound like, because there's this app called Merlin where you can learn so much about birding just by putting in descriptions, or you can even just hit it and say, what bird am I hearing? And it'll tell you. It's really cool.
I love Merlin, and I love what you just said. If there's one thing that I can leave you all with today, it's this. It's that there are hundreds of magazines and newspapers out there desperate to publish personal essays, and anything goes. That particular subject that you just talked about, building an ecosystem like Cornell's, that is perfect essay material for a magazine like Birds and Blooms, or Sunset, or even Mother Earth News. There's so, any women's magazine, there are so many places that you could publish that. High Country News, Orion, Sierra. I'll stop now. Somebody else? Don't be shy. Make us laugh.
Hi, my name is Jessica. When I was going to school, I looked a lot younger than I am.
I can't tell if somebody's talking in our group or not. Is that from the classroom? Oh, okay. Bernard, is somebody talking in the classroom?
Hi, my name is Jessica, and I wanted to share that when I was going to school to pursue my undergrad, I looked a lot younger than I am, and I was able to infiltrate, I guess, the fraternities.
Oh,
I was a I was a lot older than the average student, so going into the fraternities and as a mom was I didn't tell them, and it was interesting. That had sparred the field of abnormal psych, and so right there I was like, this is what I want to do, and I've been on that avenue ever since.
I have
I,
so many questions.
I had a high school student, and I told my daughter, I said, you are not going to that college. So, needless to say, when I moved out of the area, this was on the East Coast, by the way. When I moved out of the area, I told them, well, we're going to go back to Cali, and I'm going to put you right. So, but it was interesting, and I'm still friends to a lot of classmates that I made, and it's nice. I'm so glad I had that experience.
I'm glad you had that experience, and many editors are going to be glad as well. So there are so many magazines online and in print right now that are interested in long form pieces. So I'm actually going to renege on a previous slide where I said that most essays cap at 1,200 words, because there are several now that are fine with several thousand words. A deep dive into what Jessica just said. Oh my goodness, that as an essay with images and scenes that are really
I still
surprising.
have some pictures, but I won't post them anywhere.
That's great. Lots of sensory details evoke the smell of stale
It
beer,
was amazing.
dirty laundry. I don't know. I'm being
Well, I don't
stereotypical.
know. Then I had to go home and like be a mom.
But the idea that you infiltrated it and that you were a mom and that you're all of it is going to be catnip to editors at Narratively
That's funny.
magazine and oh my gosh, so Slate and Salon and so many others. What I mean to say is that you should, all of you should regard any ideas that you wrote down with respect and a sense that by the end of this talk, oh gosh, I have less than an hour. By the end of this talk, you'll have a pretty good idea of how to approach the essay form and how to send it to editors. I want to hear from every single person, but I don't have time. All right. So you can write a personal essay on so many topics, pets and music and pop culture. I once wrote a critical analysis of South Park and fart jokes for the Chronicle of Higher Education. Books, parenting, retirement, gaming, go D&D, friendships, etc. Dinty Moore, who wrote and that really is his name, he wrote this wonderful book, Crafting the Personal Essay, which I would highly recommend for everybody. In this book, he breaks down essay categories into memoir and contemplative and lyric. I'll explain what that is later. Spiritual, gastronomical, who knew? Humorous, nature, and travel. Where are the pets? Where are the dog essays? Where are the cat essays? Oh my goodness, Dinty, but excellent book. So if you are still looking for topics to write about in a personal essay, you might identify issues that you're struggling with right now. Are you struggling with health issues? Are you struggling with family or friend issues? Are you struggling with social issues like racism or homophobia or transphobia or ageism or other things? Environmental issues. Is climate change just bumming you out? Is your water polluted? Did your screech owls leave your backyard like mine did? We haven't seen them in 4 years. Are there political issues that you're struggling with right now? Are there political issues that you're not struggling with right now? The reason I have this picture up is that this is my younger brother who has Down syndrome. We grew up together and we lived next door to each other for almost 30 years. And then my mother, when she passed away 6 years ago, did not make it clear in her will where she wanted him to live. And I will say that he fell into enemy hands, and now he lives across the country from me in a group home where he sits and watches TV all day, every day. And if any of you know a young person with Down syndrome, and there are varying degrees, but that is no life for somebody with Down syndrome. There are people with this genetic condition who are US congressional lobbyists, Ironman triathletes, famous movie stars, etc. So I am grappling with both how to get him to move to Oregon and also the bigger story of what happens to those parents who are 80 and taking care of their kids with Down syndrome. So think about the issues that you're grappling with right now and how you might turn them into a personal essay. When I send you this slideshow, you might use this slide and the other one about areas of expertise as writing prompts to come up with a whole list of personal essay topics. So I'm really proud of this one as well. I won't read it out loud because we don't have time, but Diane Gottlieb, maybe some of you know her. She was in one of my essay writing classes a couple of years ago and worked on and eventually published the most marvelous short personal essay. I didn't have sex for almost a decade. I was surprised by what I discovered when I finally did. And here's her subhead. I hadn't rendezvoused in 8 years. That's when my first husband died in a car accident on his commute home from work. Now this was published in HuffPost, and they really specialize in those clickbait headlines and subheads. What you won't see until you visit HuffPost's website and read this essay is that she is just a kick-ass writer. And she's got several scenes involving long, high-necked flannel nightgowns that will just make you laugh out loud. This is the kind of thing that's getting published right now. Really, anything goes in the personal essay space. So who publishes personal essays? In a while, I'll give you a more exhaustive list, but literary magazines and mainstream magazines and newspaper op-ed sections. Yes, they publish personal essays. I've published personal essays in the LA Times and the Boston Globe and the Chicago Tribune and the Oregonian and a couple of other places. Also radio shows like NPR's All Things Considered and Minnesota Public Radio, and I'm sure there are others as well. I'll give you my big list. Maybe it's on the next slide. Nope. So the elements of a personal essay. First, you start with a compelling first paragraph or two called your lead. And yeah, it really is spelled that way. Don't ask me why. I don't have time to tell you. But you want to grab our attention in your first paragraph. You want to keep people from clicking past your essay and watching cat videos on TikTok. And in order to do that, you've got to grab us. I'll give you an example in a minute. So after your first paragraph or two, you want an explanatory paragraph, which is called your nut graph. And it mentions the who, what, why, where, and how of your essay as a preview. And I'll explain in just a minute. So surprise us in your essay's first paragraph. This is a first paragraph of an essay. I think you're allowed to love your own writing on occasion to balance out those days when you feel like you're the worst writer in the world. This is one of my favorite essays that I have ever written. And it starts, the chicken stood inside a 2-foot square box with a smudged glass window under a sign that read bird brain in a jaunty yellow font. She had white feathers and a red comb, and she was listless enough that onlookers at the Edgewater Packing Company, a Monterey, California warehouse turned tourist trap, believed she was a statue until they dropped a quarter into the slot beneath her window and activated a tic-tac-toe game on the wall beside her. Only then did she rouse herself and bend to peck a hidden lever in her box, illuminating a bright red X or O. So hopefully that's full of surprising imagery for you. And maybe some of you remember this horrible tic-tac-toe game from your youth. They were apparently all over the country. And part of this essay includes my research into who trained these chickens, who built these tic-tac-toe games, and where these chickens ended up. This chicken ended up alive and well with the mayor of Monterey. Who knew? So here's how I get started writing a personal essay. I get inspired by an idea or an image, like a chicken playing tic-tac-toe in the early 1980s in a Monterey packing house, or a memory, and I sit down and write. People, I am not a fan of writing rough drafts. I literally have to take myself out for a latte and say, and turn off my phone and say, Melissa, you are not allowed to get up from this coffee house chair until you have written a rough draft of this short essay. I gotta have the latte, and I usually have to have a cookie as well. And this is why, because we have to build in rewards for writing rough drafts, if that's what you despise, or revisions, if you're not a fan of revisions. When I trained owls, I always walked around with a thawed dead mouse in my jeans pocket, because that owl was not going to step on my leather glove and sit still for educational presentations unless I gave it the reward of a dead mouse. So you need to figure out, what is your dead mouse? As a writer, what is your reward? I wish I could see you right now. I don't know if you're looking at me with horror or you're laughing. So the other way I write to a personal essay is I see an editor's call for essay submissions and I write to that. And in a few minutes, I'll give you all my resources on where I find those calls for submissions. So I promised you, these slides were just a bit out of order right there. I told you about how after your scintillating first paragraph or two, the next paragraph of a personal essay is often what editors refer to as a nut graph. And that's basically the paragraph that functions as a roadmap, letting us know what you're going to talk about for the rest of the essay, so that we know we don't want to go to TikTok and watch cat videos. We want to finish reading your essay. Here's the nut graph from an essay called Love Eventually that was in the New York Times. And Ona Gritz, and remember, this doesn't have the first paragraph. This is the second paragraph of her essay. She writes, my cerebral palsy is relatively mild. I have clear speech, and though I walk slowly and awkwardly, I get around fine. In my 20s, if I considered my CP at all, it was through the lens of vanity. How noticeable was my limp? Was I pretty despite it? The answer I assumed was in the response I got from men. It was hard to decode. Apparently, I was appealing enough to sleep with, but not to be picked as a girlfriend. So this is an essay all about how this person with cerebral palsy cannot find a boyfriend. One night stands abound in this person's life, but not a committed relationship. The nut graph gives us a sense of who the essay is about, what she's going to talk about. I don't see the where in this. Maybe where she lives isn't relevant. Kind of the how she gets around, how men respond to her romantically, and then oh gosh, I lost all my W's. Well, you get the picture. Who, what, where, when, why, how, the why. she's not sure why men aren't picking her as a girlfriend. The rest of the essay looks at why and takes us on that journey with her. By the end of the essay, she has a better understanding of why men are not considering her girlfriend material. So the elements of a personal essay continue. You've got your exciting lead. You've got your informational nut graph. The rest of it is a combination, if you want it to be, of scenes, just like you would watch in a movie or television, that gives us a sense of the characters and dialogue and setting details, sensory details, conflict and tension. There's also exposition in which you as the writer explain something to us, and reflection. What does this essay mean to you? Or what is the scene that you've just written mean to you? And then finally, you have a conclusion. Ideally, that conclusion is something that remains in our minds for a long time. Your conclusion should make readers think something new and or want to do something new. Whoever was talking, by the way, about that, revamping your backyard so that it's a bird watcher's paradise along the lines of Cornell University or the Cornell Woods. I mean, if I read that essay, the first thing I do when I was done with your essay is go and completely redo my backyard. I am desperate to know what you did with photos. Okay, shameless plug for essay. And so just really quick again, in your exposition, you're explaining something to readers about a subject like chicken tic-tac-toe, or how you infiltrated the fraternity house. Reflection, you're telling us what something means to you and to readers. What does it mean to me that my great-grandparents were in vaudeville and they participated in an art form that was deeply bigoted and deeply inclusive? I reflect a lot on that as I answer that question. Of whether I should be ashamed of them or proud of them. And then anecdote or scene. You're showing us something in a scene. So remember that it is fine to turn your people in a short personal essay into characters. I do not mean to fictionalize them. Please do not fictionalize in your personal essays. You'll get into trouble. But your people and your pets are characters, and we want to see, what do they look like? What do they smell like and sound like? What do they want more than anything? And what misbeliefs are keeping them from getting it? And I do have no idea why I used that picture to illustrate this slide. I will tell you that one time, several times, I was able to write and sell essays about our cat who stole the neighbor's laundry on a 3-block radius and specialized in bringing us dozens of left-handed gloves, underwear, and a Victoria's Secret lime green bra in my size. And I wrote quite a bit about this cat, and I wrote about what he looked like and what he smelled like. He smelled like pumpkin guts. What he sounded like whenever he had an item of clothing in his mouth, including my Columbia sweater from REI. He would wander down the alley going, wow, like that. I conveyed that. What does he want? What does the cat want? He was an honorable cat. He figured if we were going to feed him and provide him with petting and veterinary care, he was going to bring us the neighbor's top half of her Halloween scarecrow and another neighbor's Grateful Dead hat. Yes. So what misbeliefs kept him from getting what he wanted? No misbeliefs. The cat had no misbeliefs. He was absolutely right. He brought us people's underwear. We fed him. It was great. Okay. So, let's skip that one. Do not shy away from including dialogue in your personal essays. I know what you're thinking. I didn't have a tape recorder with me when I was 6 and I was in the kitchen cooking with my grandfather. Or, darn it, I didn't have my smartphone and I wasn't recording when I was out skiing at Lake Tahoe with my best friend, and she told me this ridiculous story about dressing up in an inflatable T-Rex costume and filling all the little free libraries with books on Christmas Day. I did that. It's okay. Editors at magazines know, maybe not so much newspapers, but at magazines, they understand that you are recreating the dialogue of your people in your essay to the very best of your ability, staying as close to their voice as possible. We all understand this. Readers get it, editors get it, writers understand that you are recreating dialogue to the best of your ability. I love dialogue. It does so much work in a personal essay. It characterizes people. It gives a sense of relationships among people and animals, etc. It can tell us so much about education, where somebody's from, if you're using vernacular or slang or sentence fragments or interruptions. It just does so much work. It breaks up narrative because really it's hard, especially if a magazine or newspaper is only online. It can be hard to read paragraph after paragraph of text without breaking that up with some dialogue and characterization. So please consider using it and read it out loud to make sure it sounds natural and believable. Again, setting. So if your personal essay includes scene, make sure you're showing us where the action is taking place. What's below you? Is it grass? Is it tile? Is it linoleum in the school gymnasium? What's above you? Is it a beautiful redwood tree canopy? Is it the sky full of stars? Is it a popcorn ceiling that your grandma's not tearing down because she's terrified there might be asbestos in it? What's all around you? This is a picture from Costa Rica. I was in a swimming pool. There was this iguana. What's the weather like? Weather is part of your setting. Don't neglect it. So remember your setting. And along with setting, make sure that you are giving us plenty of sensory details, as I talked about before, to fully immerse us in your scene. After I write my tortured rough draft, I actually make myself a chart on a piece of paper with 5 columns. I look at my rough draft and then I make myself write all my details in that rough draft that appeal to the reader's sense of smell and taste and sound, etc. So that I make sure that I can see where I have enough sensory details and where I need to put in more. Do remember in a personal essay that it is guided by a story arc, a narrative arc. So your action should be rising to a climax, and then there should be a falling action with some reflection and resolution. If you don't have a story arc, what you have written is considered a slice of life vignette of the sort the Chicken Soup of the Soul publishes and Reader's Digest publishes and Guideposts. But without that story arc, without that rising action, climax, falling action, it's really not a personal essay in the minds of editors. So that's good to know. And remember, I will send you this PowerPoint because this is a lot of info. Narrative arc is critical. Who are you before the events that you're describing in your personal essay? And who do you become after the events? I'm very proud of this slide. This is my dog. So to give you an example, the piece I just had published about my great-grandparents, I really was pretty freaked out. I thought when I was growing up that they were famous, like along the likes of Judy Garland and Bob Hope. And then I began reading about how racist and homophobic vaudeville was, and also how it included people of all races and ethnicities and sexualities on the stage. And it's super complicated art form. And so before the events that I'm describing in that essay, I'm confused. I'm worried that maybe I should be ashamed of my people. And by the end of the events I'm describing, I realize I'm actually quite proud of them. And you'll have to read the essay to understand why. They were allies in an unusual sort of way. So make sure you give us a good sense of your journey, who you were before, who you are after. Take us on your journey in your personal essay. Okay, so many of you have published books. I was taking down notes as you were doing introductions. You can write personal essays to promote your book. When I had this book come out a couple of years ago, oh gosh, it was 6 years ago, Better with Books, 500 diverse books to ignite empathy and encourage self-acceptance in tweens and teens. I ended up writing a slew of personal essays directly related to the themes and topics in this book, including an essay on adopting my daughter from foster care for CNN, directly related to this book, an essay for Real Simple on how a little free library and the books the woman across the street put in our library for my daughter healed her after anxiety and depression in the 2nd grade, an essay on going on book tour for the book, and I'm talking radio and TV and newspapers and all that, while my mother, who was a journalist and a murder mystery writer, was dying of cancer in Southern California. And finally, an essay on why so few kids' books feature characters with Down syndrome. I'll probably write that again because it wasn't enough the first time. You should think about the themes and topics in your published books and the books that you're working on. And you can go ahead and write essays for those books, in support of those books that haven't even yet been published, to start building a readership for your books. Here's another example. When I had my memoir published, Wild Within, How Rescuing Owls Inspired a Family, which is a book about learning to train owls at a rehabilitation center while waiting to adopt our daughter, who was supposed to be from China and ended up from Oregon's foster care system. I pitched all sorts of essays and sold them related to this book, an essay for Christian Science Monitor about the wacky volunteers at the Raptor Center, an essay for a yoga magazine about learning to train owls, an essay about getting married at the Raptor Center. I don't remember where that one went. I think that was in Insider. An essay about the Adopt an Owl program and how that's kind of a misnomer for Orion, an environmental essay about our resident snowy owl and bringing snow to this snowy owl for Horizon Air magazine, the In-Flight magazine. In-Flight magazines, by the way, are fantastic for personal essays. They pay well, and ideally you have a captive audience. If they forgot to download their United app and they can't watch anything on their screen, they have to read your essay. I wrote a travel essay about the Raptor Center in upstate New York and a how-to essay delivering a talk about snowy owls for the International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators in Amsterdam, which was the strangest conference I have ever been to. You think the San Francisco Writers Conference is strange? This conference full of bird trainers? Super weird. Right. So identify topics and themes in your book, and you can spin them to include social and political commentary, essays for niche publications, like magazines that are devoted to cooking, cycling, fishing, sewing, etc., an essay for a general publication, a radio program, your college alumni magazine, They want to hear from you. They want your personal essay. They want their current students to know that people made it out of that university alive and went on to tell, to tell the tale. It doesn't have to be about your time in college. You can write a personal essay about almost anything and submit it to your alumni magazine, and they pay well. An essay for a men's magazine, a woman's magazine, a pet magazine, a travel magazine, and there are so many more. Okay, so here is what editors want to see in a submission. Most essays are submitted. This is important. Most editors want the essay submitted. They want the whole thing, and they usually want it in the body of an email. And they want, in your subject line, they want an intriguing title for your essay. So your subject line might read essay pitch, and then your scintillating title. Thoroughly proofread your essays. Even one tiny mistake could mean that the editor hits delete. You don't want to do that. Remember your compelling first few paragraphs. Editors are so busy. They are so swamped with essay submissions. They skim your first few paragraphs. Honestly, if they don't like the first few paragraphs, they'll hit delete. So make those exciting. And again, make sure the essay is new and relevant and surprising. So almost every magazine and newspaper op-ed department has writer's guidelines. Almost every magazine and newspaper has a website. You can find these writers' guidelines on their website. These guidelines are a love letter from the editor to writers, letting us know exactly what they're looking for in a submission. I said that we're going to look at the essay writing guidelines for Next Avenue, but I'm going to have you go ahead and Google Next Avenue Writers Guidelines when this is over, just in the interest of time, because I want to make sure I get to questions. So wait, no, here are some submission guidelines. Look at me forgetting my own slideshow. Here are the HuffPost personal submission guidelines, and I will tell you, Noah Mickelson at the HuffPost is one of the finest editors and human beings I have ever worked with in my entire life. If you have any short essay that's remotely interesting, controversial, remember he's the one that published Cheryl's I was married with a full-time job and then I had to move into my car. Here's what his guidelines say. We believe personal stories can change the world. A HuffPost personal piece is original, authentic, compelling, and told from the first person. We feature distinct voices and points of view, writing about identity, health, mental health, sex, love, relationships. You can read the rest of us. That. And he says, pitch us at pitch@huffpost.com. So if you are going to pitch HuffPost, you would pitch to that email address and put the essay in the body of your email. Most editors won't open attachments at this point, so remember to put that in the body of the email. So this is the good stuff. I heard so many of you as you introduced yourselves saying, I write personal essays, but I don't know where to submit them. I feel like the slide is worth its weight in gold. These are the places where I go to look for editors' calls for personal essays. I might describe these just briefly for you. Funds for Writers, the top one, is a free newsletter that comes out on Fridays, super useful to find both editors' calls for essay submissions and fellowship information. And what else? Residencies, writers' residency information, and book publishers. The good ones, the reputable ones, the ones that won't steal your money, who are looking for new manuscripts. Newpages.com has their classified section, and you could lose a whole half day perusing the submission guidelines and all the different magazines on that site. Erica Dreyfus has an amazing free monthly newsletter called Practicing Writing, in which she compiles all sorts of calls for submissions of personal essays. She also has a twice weekly newsletter, all of it for free. She's just a gem. Opportunities of the Week by Sonia Weiser is actually the way that I sell most of my personal essays these days. Sonia, for $5 a month, she calls Twitter. I can't believe people are still on Twitter. I am not calling it X. I don't care, Elon. It is Twitter now and forever. She calls Twitter for all the magazine and newspaper editors' calls for essay and article submissions. And then you get a twice weekly bulletin with all of those calls for submissions in your inbox. And I've been able to write and place so many personal essays thanks to Sonia's newsletter. Opportunities for writers. You know what? I'm not sure the writer is still doing that right now. So maybe you can click on writermag.com, but maybe not. But definitely the op-ed, Poets and Writers is a wonderful place to find magazine editors in particular looking for personal essays. And finally, the op-ed project. All of these are hyperlinked. So when I send you this PowerPoint, you can just click on these links. The op-ed project is fantastic if you want to get into op-ed writing. The people behind this, and it's free, you just click on the website. They have listed all of the op editors and all of the newspapers around the world that publish op-eds, and it is just a treasure. So here are some sample calls for submissions from editors. This first one is from Twitter. The Rumpus editor says, I'm reading essay submissions. Send us your best work. I love reading specifically BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and other marginalized writers. May I add that writers of a certain age, say writers over the retirement age, 65, are considered marginalized as well. So remember that. And then another call for submissions from the practicing writer, and this is old, sorry, but it gives you a good sense. July 8th is the deadline for submissions for the August issue of Bright Wall Dark Room. The theme of our August issue will be 1987. Oh, that takes me back. Go Prince. And we're looking for thoughtful essays on the best film and TV of 35 years ago. It pays $50 per essay upon publication. You know what I forgot to tell you? There's money in this gig. I have made everything from $0 to $2,000 on a short personal essay. And it just depends on the publication and how much money they have and how much they're willing to pay you. Really, the average, I think, for a personal essay is about $300 to $350. But in those big magazines, those glossy magazines like Real Simple and Woman's Day, they'll pay you a cool $2,000 for like a 1,000-word essay. So there is money to be made. Okay. So I just want to briefly note that I revise my essays, oh boy, 4 or 5 times before I submit them for publication. I am a perfectionist. I believe in submitting polished work to editors. I have developed over the years these questions that I free write on after my rough draft and after my third draft to really get at the heart of my essays. And I feel like my essays are so much better because I take the time to free write on topics like, what question guides this essay? How do I answer it by the end? What patterns get repeated through this essay? There's a wonderful, it's a memoir, but this still applies. There's a wonderful memoir by Nell Painter called Old in Art School. And it's about this woman, I forget what her career was. She had a very high-powered career, and she decided at age maybe 65 to go and get her master's in art. And this wonderful excerpt, the pattern that keeps getting repeated is students look at her and they realize she's a student, and they just keep saying, how old are you? And it gets to be kind of a joke. So what patterns get repeated in your essay? By the end of the essay, what will readers realize and or learn? If you can't answer that, there might be a problem with your essay and your conclusion. Remember, you're taking us on a journey from who you were to who you've become, and from a question that's guiding your essay to the answer. So I wish we had more time for that, but I want to leave time for questions. So are there questions? If you want this PowerPoint, email me at melissahart.com. If you have a quick question, you can email me as well. And because you're here today, I will answer you for free. If you want a consultation, I usually charge $60 an hour. I'll bump it down to 50, but only for you. So don't tell anybody. You got to tell me that you were here today. Okay, I want to see you. Where did you go? I lost all of you. Oh, here we go. Okay, lay some questions on me. I'll answer everything.
I've got a question about HuffPost submissions.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned that in the when we're submitting to a publication, we include our essay in the body of the email.
Yes.
You also mentioned now for certain publications like HuffPost, it also seems like they want a pitch. So you write the pitch and then you also have the article below that if they're asking for a pitch.
Chris, that is a great point. Okay, so in the specific case of HuffPost and a couple of other magazines, Noah and his colleague are absolutely fine with a couple sentence pitch, and they're absolutely fine with the entire essay as well. I do know they prefer the entire essay, though. Most editors do, because that's the only way they're going to be able to gauge if the entire piece works, as an essay, as a story. But you can certainly, email Noah and say, hey, I'm thinking about sending you this piece about whatever, and he will get right back to you with a yes or no. Yeah.
May I ask Noah's last name?
It's Mickelson, and I will get it for you I'll get you his address while I'm.
Mickelson, like Phil Mickelson?
Oh gosh, I don't know who that is.
He's a golfer. And he's not HuffPost pitch? You have his email?
No. I don't think he makes that public.
But it's at that there's that HuffPost pitch email address that we have.
Exactly. Here's his name in the chat, so you know how to spell it. Wait, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing. Oh,
Should we mention Noah when we're sending that thing? Hey,
yeah.
Melissa Hart said, call Noah. Should we do anything like that?
No, don't do that. He doesn't care. He'll just get me mixed up with the other Melissa Hart,
Melissa, it's Bernard here.
Yes, Bernard.
So first of all, before we go, I would like to have a big round of applause because I was super impressed by that.
Thank you. Wow. Thanks.
And you're going to get a zillion million more questions.
That's
but
okay.
since I've got the microphone, one other thing for the audience here, we'll have to pass the microphone so you can hear what's being asked. But since I've got the microphone, I've got a very quick question. Because you mentioned pitching your book with an essay.
Yep.
How do you exactly pitch the book in that essay? Is it at the end say, hey, by the way, I've got a book?
It's in your bio.
Pardon?
It's in your bio. So at the end of the essay, writers almost get a bio of 2 or 3 lines. And that's the place that you mention your book. And if your book isn't published, then in your bio, after that essay, you say so-and-so is currently at work on a book of historical fiction or a humorous novel or whatever, because book agents and book editors are constantly looking for new talents. And if they love your essay and they see in your bio that you're at work on a book, they will contact you. It's happened to me. It's very exciting. Yes.
Hi. If you submit or do submit the same essay to multiple publications for review at the same time? And
Well,
if so, yeah.
that is a great question, and it comes up constantly, and it is a fraught answer. Here, I'll take a stab at it. So, a lot of literary journals and some magazines take a good 6 months to a year to get back to you with a yes or no. I personally feel, as a freelance writer and a freelance journalist, that I could be dead next year, people. I don't have a year to wait on a yes or a no answer. So I do tend to submit an essay to more than one publication at a time, but not a competing publication. So if I were to, like when I was writing about the cat that stole the laundry and brought me the bra, I would not submit that essay to all the cat magazines and all the pet magazines at the same time. I would submit to the highest paying magazine or the most popular. And if they said no, then I would work down the line. But at the same time, I would also be submitting that essay to a lifestyle magazine and maybe even to some newspaper op-eds that just like an entertaining story on Sundays. And the only thing is that as soon as your personal essay gets accepted, you do, I feel, have an obligation to email all those editors that hadn't gotten back to you yet and say, I'm sorry, my essay is no longer available for first rights publication. But if they'd like to publish a reprint, more power to them.
Perfect. That was my next question. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, I have written, I can't even count how many blogs over the years for professional websites, for Psychology Today, for Forbes. And in both cases, they give me the freedom to send it wherever I want.
Wow.
Well, and it just happens to be true. So if you want to take some of your best written stuff from the past, submit it. Do you always have to say at the end, originally written for Forbes, originally written for Psychology Today? How do you handle that?
Yeah, that gets tricky. There's a lot of editors who will not publish previously published blog posts. They consider that not a first rights publication, but a reprint. And they will maybe pay for it, or they might not pay for it, but they do consider it a reprint. So if you've got a couple of pieces that you adore, I mean, you could ask Forbes and you could ask Psychology Today to take them off the website. But if an editor Googled even a sentence and your blog posts come up and they think they have just bought first rights, you will get in a lot of trouble. Just be careful.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Oh,
I mean,
good. Okay.
I came here knowing you were going to be talking about this topic, and I've been a freelance writer for like 25 plus years. So this was all interesting to me. I wish I'd had this whole seminar before I started writing.
I know, me too.
Too late now.
I had to teach myself everything.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing as you're passing the mic, people, to everybody? When possible, please try to find the editor's full name and write a couple of sentences in the email as a letter of introduction. So, dear editor's full name, I hope this finds you well. Below, please find my 1,200 word essay title, which I'd like to submit to Next Avenue or HuffPost or The Sun or whatever. If you have previous publications, you can mention them there. Thank them for their time and then put the body of an essay. I really, if you can, Google is your friend. Just type in, cat fancy, editor's name, and look for that editor's name and use the full name. And do, at this point in our society, do not assume anybody's a Mr., Mrs., or a Ms. Use the editor's full name, never assume gender. Thank you. You don't want to get in trouble.
Lisa, can I ask, I'm hoping I heard you correctly.
Yeah,
The essay should be in the body of the email,
correct.
not as an attachment.
Nope.
Ooh, I'm not sure I heard that, but.
No, you're absolutely right, Adele. You heard that right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And you have a lovely home.
Oh my goodness, all the lights. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Hello,
ask me
Melissa. I have a question here from the room.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk about relatively recent platforms like Substack and Medium and how they're sort of changing the essay landscape and how that might complement more traditional publishing and just how that all fits in your experience with that.
Yeah, that is a superb question. So I don't know a lot about this. I'm probably making a big mistake by making my monthly Substack for writers free. I noticed that some people had pledged some money to me, but it's free, and I don't know how to get that money. But I am noticing that a lot of people on Substack have monetized their Substack feeds and are paying writers to write for those feeds. So in a lot of those hyperlinks that I gave you, you're going to start seeing Substack editors or Substack owners calls for submissions as well. I wish we had time to deconstruct what Substack is and how it works, but I can't, and I don't know who asked that question, but you should talk to that person after the meeting. Does that answer your question? I mean, it hasn't, Substack hasn't taken away from all the magazines that are paying for personal essays. It's broadened the scope of where you can get published. And in some of those Substacks, they're paying several $100s. So I'm actually really excited.
Hi, I have a question. Going back to addressing an editor by name, it always has felt weird to me when I've gotten requests for information and it's addressed to my, dear full first name, last name. Is that what you're recommending, or would it be? I mean, would you say, "Dear Jennifer Gonzalez," or would you just say, "Dear Jennifer"?
Either, whatever you're comfortable with. My mom was very traditional, and we were taught to refer to adults as Mr. and Ms. And so this first and last name is a bit of a throwback to the way I was raised. If you're feeling pretty casual and the magazine is pretty casual, go ahead and do the first name. If
It's not awkward to say, "Dear Jennifer Gonzalez." People don't. I mean, is that formal? I just think it's weird personally, but
it's what you're comfortable with and what you
Okay.
think the editor, you can stop the editor briefly. Stop the editor briefly on social media. I don't think that I would have the courage to address an essay editor at the New York Times, say, or the Guardian by just the first name. But maybe I could work up to that. It's whatever.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you say something about Medium? You didn't comment on
Oh
that.
gosh, oh yeah. Did you see me just completely ignore that? No. I ignored that, Daniel, because I can't speak to it, because I'm not on it. I don't do anything on it. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. I do want to say thank you for being so much fun.
Oh gosh, yeah, okay. It's the circus great-grandparents. It was in my blood.
Melissa,
Yes.
did you ever, when you were starting out, submit something to a non-paying magazine, like a literary magazine?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh yeah. I still think there's reasons to write for free. Like, we have the Eugene Natural History Society here,
Oh,
and they have a newsletter, and they asked me to write for free on the Oregon Master Naturalist program. And I wrote a piece for free for them because I believe in the program, and I believe in the society. And yeah, I think there's reasons to write for free. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Not too often though.
Can you repeat your email address?
Oh yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Um, uh, so can I ask right now? Okay, it's on. It's on.
Oh, whoops.
One thing, Melissa, and for everybody, with Melissa's permission, I will post her slides, and I've also been recording this Zoom meeting
Oh, good.
on our website. And also, if you want it time limited, Melissa, but we can agree this by email later on. But
Okay.
yeah, I would like to post it on our website.
Oh, please. Yeah, that's fine.
In terms of writing for free, what you just mentioned,
Uh-huh.
people reading your essay on a nonprofit website or someplace that you're writing for free, they don't know you're not getting paid. So to have that piece in your CV to say, I've written for these publications, they don't have to know that you gave away your writing.
And let me tell you one quick story about how writing for free can be beneficial. I'll make this super quick. I have a colleague in Portland, Oregon, who wrote a column for free for years and years for Portland's LGBTQIA news magazine. And he always had a photo of himself in this column. He went to Powell's. He went to a reading by Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club. Chuck recognized him from his column and from his photos and said, I know you write that column. Are you working on anything longer? And this man said, well, yeah, I just finished a book. And Chuck said, I'd like to see it. He loved it. He sent it to his agent, who got this man a 2-book deal. So there are reasons to write for free, to give your stories generously, but not too many because it's a living.
Cool.
I have 2 minutes. You should give me some more questions.
Melissa, get away from me. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had a question about, you had talked about like some publications pay more, some don't. Like, when does that topic of payment come, and how do we know? Like, it seems kind of awkward.
That is such a good question, and sometimes it is super awkward, but almost not that awkward anymore. Most editors are really, really upfront now about how much they pay. The first time that you write for an editor, I feel like you pretty much have to take whatever they give you. But the second and third times, it's perfectly acceptable to say, hey, I've already written for you once. Can you do a little better? And I've negotiated, 100 or 200 more. Gosh, I can't even think about the last time I worked with an editor who didn't tell me up front what the payment was going to be. And it's usually in the submission guidelines as well. Most editors these days will send you a contract. Some won't. I think it's a good idea to work from a contract always. But if you're a first timer, maybe don't press the issue. There was somebody who, Jackie, you had a question.
Hi, thanks. I actually had two. One's a real novice, ignorant question is, you mentioned first rights. So when you submit something, they have the rights to it. If they publish it, they own the rights. You can't republish it somewhere else.
No, not true.
Okay.
Here's a quick, so all rights, if you sell all, ALL, that means it's theirs forever. It will never be yours again. First rights means the editor has the right to publish it first. And you negotiate, or your contract states, you're not allowed to seek a reprint of that essay for the first 3 months or the first 6 months. But after that, you can reprint. You can get more money. You can get more eyes on it. Go for it.
Okay, that's great. And can I ask, my second question is almost the flip side of the question around, can you send your essay to multiple places all at once? And the flip side is, can you send multiple, like, I've got these 2 great essays for HuffPost or for Sierra Magazine or whoever. Can you send 2 in at once?
Not in the same email.
So do 2 different emails, but you could submit 2 at the same time and mention, I've also sent you a different one.
You don't even need to mention that.
Because they're not good. They're going to different editors?
No, they're just not going to remember because they're looking at 100 to 200 essays a day.
Okay. So they don't care.
Yeah, unless you have a standout name, your name.
Like
There's
Melissa Hart?
not so much standout. But yeah, so you're good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. Bernard, I think we're done.
One more.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry. Hi, I'm Dana. Thanks for
Dana.
being here. I just had a quick question about writing for nonprofits. If you file yourself as an LLC as a writer, can you use that free stuff that you'd give to the nonprofits that you want to support as a tax write-off? Or
I
don't know if
don't know. I've never been asked that before. I have no idea. My husband has a book called LLC for Dummies.
Yeah.
I will consult that book.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I got stumped.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Melissa, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I look forward to getting your notes. I've taken 2 pages of notes, but I want the real notes.
Forget the books. We're all going to become essay writers now. So
You can do
don't
both.
mind
I
the
do both.
competition, Melissa, do you?
What's that?
You don't mind the competition, do you?
I love it. I need something to read. I'm tired of my own stuff. Yeah, send it to me. I'll help promote it on social media too.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Another round of applause, I think.
Thank you. All right, y'all are wonderful. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks.
All right, bye.
It was good. That was worthwhile.
Great presentation, Bernard. I loved it.
I thought she did a superb job.
Yeah, right. Can't wait to get those notes.
Yes, I've attended many writers' talks, and she was amazing.
Wasn't she good?
Mhm.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Hope so.
Everybody on Zoom. Thanks, Adele. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
I'm going to shut down now. So keep checking back onto the website when I put this on the web. Okay?
Bernard, would you send me the email for Alex Hanold's mom? Send me the email for Alex. Alex, can't hear. Would you send me the email? Are you muted or can you not hear?
Yeah, I'll definitely check out the website.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. It's send me an email.
No, I mean, just send me Alex Hanold's mom's email. Alex Hanold's mother, who spoke a few months ago. When you have a chance, send me her email.